Live.
We're on.
We're on. Okay, I just want to see that the page is broadcasting. It's loading. Good. So, welcome to us. Welcome to you all. If you're watching us live now, or if you're watching us not now, which is your now. And we are with what really is, which is, I always give a little introduction for people who don't know us. And when I say what really is, it's a name we gave to something we do. It started as a book that we wrote, Ruti wrote, finally, after years of exploring and learning and teaching and coaching. And then came the time to write a book. And then we had to name the book. So we called it What Really Is. But what really is not a name and it's not a thing. It is what really is. The word is, I think, is the main thing. And this is what we explore. This is what we wish for, is to acknowledge and get more and more, it's tricky to say in touch, because this is what we are. We can't get in touch with this. This is what we are. And from here we talk, and from here we question, from here we meet each other and you. And this is what this live is about. And we're talking today about responsibility. And yeah, if you, of course, like to know more, then you can find the book on our website and a lot of content and things that we are doing and writing. But today we are live and we're hosting Marcelle. Ruti and Marcelle know each other for a long time, so I will now give the microphone to Ruti to tell us a little bit, introduce us to Marcelle, our guest.
So first of all, I asked Marcelle to join because she's a friend. And when I mean a friend, it's not only that we've gone a long way together already, but that I become, I think, smarter thanks to talking to her. I explore whatever I could not see before when I'm with you. So for me, whatever you do and whatever you touch, whether it's business, entrepreneurship, whether it's joint ventures or connecting Israel and Africa, whether it's you being a lawyer of a certain kind, coming from South Africa, work unions, labor unions, family of Nelson Mandela, the bush, the smell, the beauty, the memories, all of them are part of what you are. They make you who you are, but then there is this magnificence of you that stems out of them, but doesn't stay there. You've been writing lately, you've been like creating your own website. And I think I would, speaking of responsibility, just knowing that that's the topic, but not having to analyze it, but just thinking and reflecting and seeing what you write and what it does to you to be writing these things. Can you say a bit about that?
Thanks, Ruti. think the writing for me, certainly in this period, is, interestingly enough, some way to even go fundamentally. It's difficult to say how do you dissolve in yourself. I think we've spoken about this, but I think that there's somehow something in terms of what I'm doing today, and you would think it's contrary to what is happening, where you probably want to interface more, but what's happening is there is somehow this feeling of wanting to dissolve myself in myself until really there's nothing there. But part of it is really an understanding. It's not an understanding, I know, that is of ahead. It is definitely touching places that I've never touched before, and that's what the story, or what my website. The website started as, it didn't even have a purpose. It started out of the fact of wanting to really get in touch with myself even more. And every time I come to the story and to the pages, it does something to me. It does something to me. And I think that the topic, the subject, responsibility, touches quite profoundly on a number of things that are coming out of this story. Yeah.
Can you give an example, or choose something that is like you are revisiting those places in you, being who you are today, right? So it's like, but you don't try to bring yourself to something or make yourself something, but you really go back to it as it is, and then from there something happens. Can you say more about that?
I think there were three things that I touched on, even when I was sitting down today and writing. One really related to the aspect of, I don't know if the saying or the quotation has been attributed to both Eleanor Roosevelt and to Nelson Mandela, but essentially, and it's something that is profound in terms of, with freedom comes responsibility. And when you mentioned this, the topic of responsibility to me, I was wondering, okay, so what teaches us responsibility? Where does responsibility come from? Is it the fact that we have the freedom that gives us that responsibility? Responsibility to whom? Also from the point of view of, if I'm not free, or if others are not free, then I'm not free. In what context is the relationship between myself and what we term in terms of the outside? Also in terms of Bantu culture, that the Ubuntu, or the fact of saying that I am what I am because of who we all are, is where is that interchange between me and that outside, or all of who we are?
So Marcelle, if you go back for a moment let's go back to South Africa and your childhood. Can we do that?
Sure.
So if you go there, I remember that you went back to South Africa after a long time. You haven't visited. And you came back and you were talking about the smell of the bush. And as now, it's just, it was so beautiful. I could be in Africa with you when you were saying that. It's like you really came home. And I know that here is also hope for you. But if you go back to your childhood, and from there you look at what it is that you get, you know, it's the origin, but it's also it's like a conviction to something. You're not born there without being influenced deeply, so that who you are today is in a way the fruits of it. In a way, it's like you have you have you're like a messenger for something. You are being. So if you can elaborate about that.
A part of my story, in many senses, it's interesting because through writing, I see how much the theme comes up and up. It's revisited all the time in terms of a tree. And I loved the Hebrew word. There is the English word in terms of rooting yourself, but somehow the Hebrew word, I know, in terms of lehishtaresh, that feeling rooted, like your feet are firmly planted in the ground. In many senses, I guess I didn't realize even coming to Israel, and I always say coming to Israel because I wanted to come to Israel, but I didn't want to leave, and there's no feeling of having left South Africa. But that tree that came to Israel, somehow it's like when you lose a limb and they talk about the phantom pains. So similarly, it's like that uprooted tree, and it's as if there's that place where the roots are no longer in that place, but you're uprooted, and those roots are connected to you, and somehow you're a tree with those roots. In many senses, there's also the fact that you're a tree outside of the forest. So feeling the fact that you're not really part of something. There's a certain, I don't know if it's an alienation, but there's certainly a fact that you're not part of the forest. And in many ways, that lends itself to an amazing thing, because you do have eyes, or you do have experiences that are different from those that are within the forest.
Mm-hmm. So if you go back to South Africa, it's so beautifully said. So if you go back to South Africa, you've been, on the one hand, you were brought up feeling so loved and secured, right? It was like there were the people who took care of you. There are your parents. There was something very whole and full, feeling very, very in your, in your rhythm, and on the other hand, there was apartheid then.
Yeah.
And you were going through the realization of it being an apartheid in your life. You were growing up, and then you saw this. And then after that, long after that, you came to Israel. And before you started representing labor unions and others, realizing the impact of the apartheid on every aspect of being a human being. So if you look at that and you share with us a bit what this realization, this waking up to that, without losing the beauty and without missing the smells and the feeling of being secure, how is that living in you today? And how is that trip, and present in your lives in different phases?
On a very simplistic level, I can only say that what's still simplistically, but so fundamentally, the things that remain are those experiences with people that touched you, whether as a young little girl or whether as a teenager or as a law student or as a lawyer, or as a South African living in apartheid. But the thing is, it's that which I still feel very strongly. It's just going back to people who I wonder what has happened to them, what has happened to the person who I went to visit in the jail with his ball and chain on his feet, and the old black gardener that I would sit with, and the people that took care of me, aside from my parents. It's that. It wasn't, I would say it really maybe only came and where was the consciousness level in terms of the separation was really, if I look at it when I was older, when I was a lawyer, when I was in touch with those that were, being confronted by the struggle. That's probably when it touched me in terms of, hey, this is what is going on here, the injustice of it. Other than for the fact that, there was separation, different dishes, different benches, different buses, but you grew up very privileged. And such amazing people through it all. I always talk to you about that, and it strikes me because I guess that it's the movies or it's the documentaries or those kind of things where I go back and they either remind me, because I've really got to, that's the whole part of trying to dig deeper, trying to go down deeper. But it is really in terms of where's that responsibility. I remind us all of that Kevin Carter moment as we spoke about, where the photojournalist took the picture of the little girl, or the little boy, it turns out, who was being watched from 100 meters by a vulture and was crawling to the UN station and was dying. And he took the picture because photojournalists didn't get involved really in terms of doing something. I'm struck with those Kevin Carter moments. I would think that the biggest thing that comes to mind, and eventually he committed suicide, but I'm struck by those Kevin Carter moments because I think what lends itself in just a feeling that comes from that responsibility is remorse. Remorse, not in the sense of guilt. It's not a guilt thing, but in the sense of how close do I feel to being sorry about the fact that somebody else is hurting. And a lot of the time, I think that maybe we don't get into the realm of responsibility, because there's such a separation between who I am and who the other is. And we feel that if we had to say sorry, then that would be something that would be admitting guilt. Instead of looking at the fact of how much that saying sorry is really a responsibility towards oneself, and what comes out of that. Those are really the themes, I think, that come before.
You're saying that he committed suicide?
Yeah.
Can you connect this to what you said before? Can you say something about that from your understanding? Not.
I think that the lens is one thing in terms of being in touch with a situation, and how that lens, or how that moment that we capture via lens, allows us to experience something and go through something. But the fact of, and that's the thing, how much do we get involved? Is it enough that we see the whatever horrors, or we see tragedies, or we see difficult things happening around us? In what situation do we not get involved? And I think that's also part of it, is the fact that when you live in a bubble. I question so much in terms of the living in a bubble, because in South Africa, I lived in a bubble. And, you know, like a fly, you just swat it away and say, you swat it away. So that living in a bubble is, how much are you apart, essentially apartheid? How much are you separated? And how much do you really get involved? And how much am I, because of who you are? And those are fundamental questions, because again, I've been stuck in modes where I try to justify, I try to explain, I try to compare, I try to distinguish, but realizing that, yes, there is a mirror between us and the outside fundamentally, and through you, and thanks to you, the synergistic and even the attraction in nature, and you can see it today, where the fact that we're disconnected and make distinctions and comparisons, etc., but we don't come from a place, in many a time, we don't come from a place of ourselves, and whatever somebody does to us, we condition our behavior on what somebody does to us, instead of looking at, where do I do that to myself? Where do I do that to others? And I think that is a major and fundamental difference in terms of how we take responsibility.
But I think when I listen to you, it's really beautiful. I want to connect it to what you said before, because this understanding, which for me is the essence, as you said it, to responsibility. Responsibility doesn't come from morality. It doesn't come from the right thing to do. We understand that sometimes to be that, but it's not. But if I really know that I cannot be not hurting when somebody else is hurting, and there cannot happen something somewhere which does not concern me truly, then from there, I can also be involved. Because if I come to be involved in social matters or justice, coming out of separation, then we actually cause more pain, sometimes unknowingly. Okay. For example, with your permission, there was a time that you were doing hasbara, yeah, for Israel. How do you say hasbara in English? It's like
clarification, explanation, explaining away.
yeah, and it was a difficult time there.
Yeah.
Can you say something about that and connect it to responsibility as you see it today?
Yeah. You know, we spoke about the word epiphany, and probably it's opportune in terms of a new year, but essentially we go through many experiences in our lives, and one wonders what is that actual moment that manifests itself to allow you to do that kind of, your mind twists as something that is not, it's just not the way that you see things. It's not the way you were brought up. It's not the way in terms of your convictions, your logic, how your mind works. The hasbara, or the explaining away, and I guess what I was doing at that time in terms of trying to do comparisons and distinctions in terms of ideology, was at a time when there were a load of, bus bombings, terror attacks, suicide bombings. And I can just recall at that time, which, moments, I remember taking my little, she was at that time, I think 3 or 4 years old. It was June the 2nd, I believe, because it was my birthday. And I was walking with my little girl in Tel Aviv, and it was the day, Saturday, after the Friday night at the Dolphinarium suicide bombing attack. And there was a woman who was a Russian immigrant who just lost her 2 children in the discotheque bombing. Across the road, there was the Hassan Bek mosque. There were, of course, a little bit of upset and commotion in terms of what was going on. And in the spirit of all of this, I was explaining away on campus to students, to people in terms of what was going on. And actually, interestingly enough, leveraging, and I'll use that word on purpose, leveraging Nelson Mandela's quotations in terms of things like criminals masquerading as freedom fighters have no place in the struggle. Like with freedom comes responsibility. But I could only relate to our side, okay, a comparison between maybe what the African and the Jew. I think it took the synergy, or the fact that we started to meet with our fears, or meet, if I can call it, even with Palestinian women. But at that stage, I didn't understand yet, and could relate to it only, like, you have all these bridging movements, you have bridging, brokering, conflict resolution, but coming from a place where you actually see the other as a mirror of yourself. And it's fair enough to talk about the fact of being able to, if somebody else hurts, how am I able to actually not hurt if I see somebody else hurt? But I think fundamentally, and they call this the redemptive Mandela moment, when he met with an Afrikaner woman. I think it was the woman who was going to take over as his secretary. And she thought, what is this man going to do? I mean, he has been in jail for 27 years at the instance of a regime that I supported. And he recognized that essentially she was coming from a place of fear. And the black man was also coming from a place of fear. And unless we could see the fear of the other, or we could tap into that fear in ourselves, I don't think there'd be a way to be able to, it's not about bridging, but tap into that place where you can really relate. You can really relate.
So in a way, you're saying that there is no such thing as bridging. You find it within yourself, and that's the bridge. There's not something external that can happen. You can only find the other, or what you call the other, within you, and that's it. The bridge is done by doing that, or what we call a bridge. Did I understand you right?
That's so, but sometimes I want to take my head and try and understand, how can it be that I live in a world of relationships? So what does that relationship mean for me? And this work that I'm doing just with myself, and where I just want to be with myself and go into myself, where does it lead me in terms of the other or the outside? Is there? What is that mirror? Because at the end of the day, I can do my work, which fundamentally I shouldn't be concerned about what's happening on the outside. And I think we grow up understanding things in a conditioning way, but it's correct what you say. It is correct what you say. The only thing that I'd want to say, and again, and that comes down to being, I think, is there such a thing in terms of being grounded? Where is the grounding? Should there be a grounding in terms of the fact of, is fear in any way related to threat? Are there threats? And if there is a situation where I feel no fear, or I feel fear, is that in any way related to something on the outside? So there still are so many questions as far as that's concerned.
I think that I would like you to say something about, I think we'll have another session about this fear, and is there a place where you can live not out of fear? What does that mean? But when you were speaking now about, I was speaking about the bridging that comes from really witnessing from the inside what's really there, and the way it really is. Then I think that modesty calls us to reflect on the Truth and Reconciliation Councils. That for me, when you were telling me about this, changed my life. And I think that in a way that is the complementarity of that. It's like, it's the way that if we agree to live in the world, practical, not fearing practicality, not demanding of ourselves to be formless, okay? Then allowing ourselves to be human beings. Then I think so many things that Nelson Mandela has done and seen and are light to me during my life. And I think that was something that is really, it conveys the wisdom, the true wisdom of Nelson Mandela, of the heritage of Nelson Mandela. Can you talk a bit?
It's, and maybe in terms of that, and it's very true, because I got to this word sorry. Indeed, with freedom comes responsibility. There was something that really hit a chord in terms of remorse and being sorry. And
wait, but can you say something about them? Because many people don't know what it is. Can you say something about what are the councils of truth and reconciliation?
In the Western mode of thinking, if I can say that in a humble fashion, I hope, we are used to the notion of the Nuremberg trials. We're used to you do wrong, you're punished. And I think in not only the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, but you find that also in terms of what happened in Rwanda and the genocide there in 1994. You would have a situation whereby under these trees would sit the elders and those who had killed the families of, so basically, as we see it, as victims and perpetrators would come together. And eventually you would have those who perpetrated would go and rebuild the houses of the families who they had basically decimated. I think there was something in terms of the storytelling, the sharing, which is the major aspect of what is behind the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. And also there is the aspect of forgiveness. Forgiveness is I don't think I want to get into the forgiveness aspect too much, because in many ways, I'm not sure that it is my realm or anyone's realm to actually forgive. I think part of it is the fact of not forgetting. I think that's a major, major thing there. So I'm quite in line with the notion that only the heavens can forgive, if there is forgiveness to be made. But it does take me, in light of what we spoke about with the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, to that documentary that I've shared with you in terms of One Day After Peace. And probably it rounds it in some way off, because in that situation there was a South African woman whose son was killed as an Israeli soldier. He was killed by a Palestinian sniper. And she went back to South Africa, and there was a documentary made in terms of this Truth and Reconciliation Commission and whether it could be duplicated in the Middle East in our context. And you see it starting off with incredible. You start off with one Afrikaans gentleman who was responsible with loading a vehicle full of black people and setting it alight, and it plunges down a ravine. And I had no choice. There was a no choice that came from that. So you can see, in my eyes, a lack of remorse. Then you have the Minister of Defense who comes, and in Christian right, he comes to an elderly black woman whose son, he was instrumental in the death of the son. And you see him washing the feet of the woman and them both coming together. And this continues, and you see what was at that particular time the African Nationalist Congress responsible for planting a bomb in a bar, which also killed a white woman's child. And all of this in terms of truth, reconciliation. In some places, you can see a reconciliation. And in terms of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, there had to be, in order to give amnesty, because that was part of it, give amnesty, you had to come, you had to relate your story, and you had to be truly sorry that you had done something like this. And eventually the documentary ends off with the woman going to the prison or the family of the prisoner, the Palestinian prisoner, and wanting to see whether some kind of full circle can be made out of it. And there isn't any full circle. And that's probably the thing, whether a full circle comes out of it or not, because today you have recriminations as far as the Truth and Reconciliation Commission is concerned, people that felt there should have been more justice, as we understand justice to be, punishment meted out, which wasn't the case. But so much in terms of the memorializing of those experiences and storytelling and sharing what happened. I think that is the ultimate, that's where the work is. That is where the work is. And probably as part of it is, it's that mirror, being able to actually confront your fears, confront your hate, confront your anger. But it's yours, it's yours. That's just a little bit what I can say, I guess.
You're saying that now there are people thinking that that was walking halfway, and that justice needs to be done, then lands should or property should be returned, and justice should be done by returning and compensating. And I was reflecting on that a lot, because on the one hand, it sounds so logical that we are supposed to do justice. And if that it was taken from them, then it should be returned. And you cannot prosper on stolen property or property taken by force. My mind was saying this, and it's also true. But then I thought to myself, during that time, the Truth and Reconciliation commissions, there was an understanding that really acknowledgement of such a thing, accompanied by humility and compassion. Yes. Understanding that not only, which is so much what you said about realizing that I am the one who took, I'm the one who's violent, I'm the one who's hurt. Realizing that I'm all of these, but even on top of this, or on the basis of it, you can also realize that we are human beings, and that evidently is the human condition. This is the level of awareness that we've reached. And that is something that that calls for compassion and calls for responsibility, which has nothing to do with guilt, but with witnessing what is. Okay, and when I am there, the power of it is, of course, it is it's given or taken, or it gives a blessing to the people who are taking part in this encounter. But it also, in a way, allows something to be fulfilled and completed in history. It's the acknowledgement that we are human beings. I'm talking about responsibility now, but not in a sense of a burden, but in a sense of the movement, the motion that comes out of realizing that we are human beings. And by saying that, we're actually saying two things. One is that we need compassion and we need humility, because if they are not there, then we attack ourselves or we attack others. And from there, it's a vicious circle. But on the other hand, or complementary to that, is the understanding that at a certain moment in history, or we might say at a certain moment in eternity, there was this. And we do like that, and we acknowledge. And by acknowledging this, we are no longer separated from this. We're no longer analyzing history, but we become the messengers of history, in that sense that when I looked at what it was 24 hours on a continuous basis, right? 7 days a week, it was broadcasted, right?
Yeah.
So it's like when I was seeing this parts of it, I could be that time in history. I could know myself through that time in history, and through that to become who I am today. Full, complete, and the word humility comes to mind. Because when you say not forgiving, the question is not about forgiving, right? It's about humility and compassion. It's not thinking he did that to me, so I need to forgive him, but that this happened in history, and I want to open my heart and open my faculties of understanding and realizing, and then from there becoming it, knowing that I'm all of these, that I am the soldier, and I am the man who put the bomb, and I am the man who decided that we go through that way, and from that continuing. I think that's in many senses, since we're close to the end, that is in many senses what happens when someone comes into your website. I don't know if it's on the air already, but it's like you go through the whole, through different chapters, it's like something closes and then a new thing opens. And what you call the tree is there all the time, and we can follow it. And then through that, know ourselves better and know that we are human beings and that that's okay. We're not supposed to not be human beings. I think it's very beautiful. Yeah.
Thank you, Rati. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So sounds like a good chord to end with. Marcelle, I hope to have your website. So, is it ready?
No. No, still a lot of more exploration to do. I'm still working with a tree, and but thank you. Thank you.
When it will be ready, please let us post it.
Much appreciated.
Thank you very much. Have a lovely weekend.
You too.
Goodbye.
Bye-bye.